Hi, in this video I'll explain you how I found my why with the help of ChatGPT. It is going to be a step-by-step guide such that you can do the same to find your own why. I'll let you know my why at the end of the video. If you have been confused for a long time on what it is that motivates you specifically, in the same way I was, then this video will help you clear things out. This method is based on Simon Sinek's and his colleagues' work in the book Find Your Why. So, if you want to dig deeper into this subject, I highly recommend you read it, along with Start With Why. By sticking till the end and following the process, you'll be able to find your own driving power. This is the golden circle. It illustrates how you operate in this world. Your whats are the actual things you do. For a firm, this is the products they sell. Then you have your how. These are the guiding principles you apply in your work. They are the behaviors you use to realize your why. And in the center is your why. It is your motivation, your driving force. It says who you are, what you believe in, and it encompasses what you've been through. It can be summarized in a simple sentence that says who you are at your natural best. While most people know their what and some know their how, it's rare to find someone who knows their why. The individuals and companies that know their why and act and communicate from inside out of this circle are the ones that end up most fulfilled and have a greater impact. For example, you might really enjoy the work you are engaging in right now, but when the project is done, you are clueless on what to do next. That's because you don't know your why. If you are aware of your why, you can have direction and live with fulfillment. Every action becomes a representation of your own why. As an example, Simon Sinek's why is to inspire people to do the things that inspire them, so that together each of us can change our world for the better. That's powerful. Your why isn't something material like making money. It is your best positive contribution and impact to this world. It's what inspires you in everything you do, not just at work or in your off time. Your why is the same everywhere. If that's not the case, you're not truly yourself in one of your environments. Now that you know what your why is and why you need to know it, we can get to finding it. Here is an outline of what we are going to do. We'll start by gathering important and specific stories from any point from your past. Then, you'll communicate these stories one by one to your partner, which is ChatGPT. Next, you'll answer his clarifying questions. Afterwards, ChatGPT will tell you what the themes in your stories are. These are the ideas that reoccurred in more seemingly unconnected stories. Then, you will select the most important themes and create your why statement, a sentence which expresses your why. You need a partner because you are too close to your stories to observe the underlying patterns. That's where the objectivity of ChatGPT comes in. You can also do this with a friend as your partner, but you'll need to look into the specific steps for them in the book Find Your Why. That's it. If you feel like that's too much work, consider the alternative. Continue to live your life directionless, hoping you'll somehow get to your true purpose by accident. Yeah, if you focus, you can finish this in a couple of hours. Imagine how cool it is to be able to say you know your purpose, how much more confident you are and sound. Now, if you're still here, let's get to work. First step, gather your stories. Why stories though? Because they are the unique experiences that shaped who you are today. Your why will find its way in all your significant stories. Also, two people could experience the same thing, but the way you tell that story will reflect your unique perspective. you will say the same story in a different way compared to the next person, and you will instinctively focus on some aspects more, highlighting your essence. So, go ahead, look through your past, from the moment you were born till yesterday, and look for moments that feel like they changed you. Moments you learned something impactful. They can also be times you felt you contributed to other people's lives. The important thing is that the stories are specific, not generalities. This is crucial. Instead of telling about how you used to go each summer to your grandparents, pick a specific such event that impacted you or that felt special. It should sound like this. There was that one time when, and you go with the story. They can be obvious picks, like when you had a huge success, or more personal stories that meant something to you. If you feel like you were at your best, note that story down, even if it seems like a random pick. You can use paper and do mind mapping, which looks like this. Basically, just vomit your stories on paper as they come to you. If you feel uninspired, try to go through phases of your life and think of what stood out in each. You can put them in a chart by how positive or negative this experience were. When selecting your crucial stories, go for the highest highs and the lowest lows. Yes, sad stories that really impacted you work too. I used some when I did this myself. And if you can't seem to find any stories, here are several prompts from the book to help you find some. Gather a good amount of stories through any of these methods, at least 10. They can be even more. I recommend you list them on paper. When listing the stories, don't write them in detail, just a couple of words that remind you which story you are referring to. Something like this: first job, trip to London, meeting my best friend, car crash. Then select the ones that you think are really speaking to who you are. Go for around 10, but don't stress it. If you really can't leave a story out of the list, then keep it in. As Simon Sinek puts it, all roads lead to Y. If you have trouble selecting stories, try to start by crossing out the ones that seem less important compared to others. Go with your gut feeling. Before going further, make sure the stories you selected are about specific times. Now, ChatGPT comes in. If you feel unsure about sharing your stories to an AI bot, do the following things. Create a new Gmail without filling in the recovery mail address and your phone number, or use an old Gmail address unidentifiable with you. With this, sign in to ChatGPT and deactivate memory and improve the model for everyone in the settings. Do all this process with a VPN if you have one, and you are as safe as you can get. You can even delete your account when you're done with the process. When sharing your stories, make sure you're not including personal details or sensitive data that could identify you. You can switch up some information as long as the storyline and your emotions stay the same. Now, open a new chat and give this initial prompt. I want to find my why as illustrated by Simon Sinek in the book Find Your Why, and I need a facilitator. The PDF tells you what your role is, including the prompt, this PDF, which gives him instructions on being your partner. You'll find it in the description. Next, tell it you'll start sharing each story one at a time. Specify that it can stop you at any point to ask any further questions and to fill its role as the partner when it feels you are not going on the right path. After this, start writing in each prompt one story. I recommend you start with the most important stories first, but you can go in any order feels natural. Then, it will give you a summary of what you told it and will ask you some questions. Focus on the questions and ignore its summaries for now. Answer the questions that do feel like they need to be answered, all in one prompt. Afterwards, it might ask you further questions about the same story, at which point you can write it the answer to the questions that feel important and tell it you'll move to the next story in the same prompt. Then, write your next story. Keep doing this until you finished all your stories. As I said, I recommend you answer at most 2 sets of questions, as it might get redundant after that. And if you feel like you have to think through a question and struggle a bit to come up with an answer, try to focus and come with something, as those type of questions that challenge you highlight your true self. Also, you are the one responsible for sharing how you feel about each story when you tell it. ChatGPT might help you with some questions, but you should do the most part. After some prompts, it will tell you that you've reached your limit in using the model. You'll know that's the case because an error message occurs when sending a prompt. Refresh the page. At this point, you'll need to wait a bit to use the model again, but in the meantime, you can continue to write your stories in a Word file and have them ready by the time you can use ChatGPT again. When telling your stories, make sure to not be vague. Be specific. Express how those moments made you feel and what made you choose these stories over others. If you feel like giving some background or going into a side story as you talk about one story, please do so. It was your instinctive feel that guided you to another story that correlated. Go into details. Now is the time to express yourself. But the details don't have to be about random stuff, such as the exact day it happened, unless that matters. They have to be about feelings. Open yourself and be vulnerable enough to share. This will allow the process to work. If you were vague, then focus on the questions it asks you. After sharing all stories, let it know any additional details or stories that you feel you've left out and were important. Then ask it if it has any left important questions about any of the stories. Answer those and then tell it you are done with the stories. Ask it to identify all the themes in your stories while remembering what the theme is. Now, it's time to take these themes and write them on paper in a list. This could be 5, 10, or even 20. Look over them. They are who you are at your natural best. Your life revolves around those themes. You might not even have thought before about some of those themes as being part of you. Some of them are more important and representative than others. You need to select 1 or 2 of the themes. Select the most important ones, the ones that pop out and feel like you. They will feel just right. If you struggle with this step, you can go through each theme and cross out those that seem less important. As you go through each theme, see how it ties to your stories and what it means about you. Here is an extra tip. Some of the themes will feel as if they are a how, ways you bring other more important themes to life. They will feel like supporting themes rather than the main thing. Those will become your house, so cross them out for now. For me, many of the themes seemed like behaviors to help manifest one central theme. Don't feel like you have to leave out some of the themes by crossing them out, as you'll see they will be useful in a bit. But for now, just stick to the essential themes. Also, some themes might feel like external motivations, things such as money. Those won't be part of your why statement. Maybe there is something deeper than that in those themes. You will need to select one theme that captures your unique contribution and one that captures its impact. As your why statement will look like this: to blank, so that blank. The first blank is your contribution theme and the second one is your impact theme. You can also ask ChatGPT to narrow down the themes to the 2 most crucial ones. It might come with multiple solutions. For me, what I picked as the 2 themes were the same that ChatGPT suggested, so you can see how all roads lead to why. but you should choose what you feel matches you. And don't let ChatGPT influence you too much at this point. Just trust your gut. Now, play around for some minutes with the wording to get a version of your why statement that feels right. It should sound right to you, not necessarily fancy. If it feels right, it is right. Use the words that match you and remind you of the stories that the themes come from. Ask ChatGPT to create a draft with the two themes too, as it might come with a version you like even more. You might be tempted to make it long and put every theme in your statement, but remember, a short sentence is easier to remember, more actionable, and inspiring. And that's it. You have your why. You can let it sit for some time and see if the wording changes, but the essence of it will be the same. By acting on it, you will make the words adjustments as it feels right. As for the themes that didn't make the statement, they are actually your house. They are how you bring your why to reality. They are guiding principles and actions. And together, your why, your house, and the stories they come from result in you. When you look back to your stories, you'll see how the meaning of your why statement matches them. If you want, you can use those left themes to write statements for your house, but keep it to a maximum of 5 essential house that encapsulate the main themes. Do this by combining similar ideas or crossing out less important ones. They should be action-like sentences, such as take responsibility. Here are some additional tips if you feel at any point that your why statement is still a bit off. Regarding contribution, look in your stories for both the things you gave that made an impact on others and the things you received that made an impact on you. That's what your contribution revolves around. It's what you find in everything you do so that you generate your impact. For the sad stories, look for silver linings. What is something you've learned from it? How did it change who you are today? Try to go through different environments from your life. When you're with your friends, when you're alone, when you're with your family, when you're with new people. What is the time you feel most fulfilled in each of these experiences? List them on paper. Think of specific times. And think what it is about each of these that makes me feel fulfilled. What is the common pattern? What do I contribute with or receive in each of these stories? There usually is a common thing that keeps reoccurring. What is your role in each of these situations? Regarding impact, after you figure out your true contribution, look again at your stories and the situations you usually find yourself in when you feel fulfilled. Then look for what difference those contributions made on you if you were the receiver. If you were the giver, look for how it affected the receivers. That's your impact. There is some way in which you impact others, even if you're not aware yet. After revisiting one of my stories, I noticed that the person impacted by my contribution was actually myself. That was quite an unique sensation. It helped me see how I impacted others in more stories. Days or weeks or months might go before you come to the version of your why statement that feels best, but you'll inevitably find more about what your why means by acting on it. So go ahead, leave it. Go through different versions of the wordings, but the essence is the same once you find it. My why is the following. I create and solve to inspire others to grow. Well, that was my first draft. Then, 2 days later, it felt as if the contribution part of the statement is more like a service rather than my contribution to people. So I changed it. And 1 day later, a third version came to me and it sounds like this: to ignite in others a feeling of wanting more from life so that they feel inspired to grow. This last version seems to me like it expresses more clearly how I contribute to other people's life. That's because besides creating and problem solving, there were other meaningful ways in which I managed to give my contribution throughout my life. So I had to put it in a way that encompasses everything without specifying each thing I do to contribute. And this final version really speaks to me. For you, it might mean nothing, but for me, it is just perfect. I suggest you take a break from hyper-stimulating activities such as social media for some days before going through this process. This will make your vision of yourself more clear and will remove the influence of other people's ideas and opinions on your thinking. You'll learn a lot about yourself and what makes you special by going through this process. And while you're at it, don't go in biased, expecting a certain answer or something exotic, trying to influence ChatGPT to go in a certain direction. Whatever comes out as your why, it is you at your best. Enjoy it. Filter your decisions using your why statement and your house. Live your why. If you like this type of content or you feel like it helped you, you know what to do. See you next time. Peace.